This is Comic Picks by the Glick.
I'm your host, Jason Glick.
Hey, Jason, what's going on?
Hey, John. Well, it's like we're following up on a podcast we did last year. It's like one that's about like one of like the biggest titles to come out like in recent years for a specific franchise. I'm talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And God knows, it's like I've got a lot of affinity for them, like growing up back in their heyday. And I've already done one, like podcast about the recent comic book resurgence through IDW. And then last year we did a podcast talking about like the big TMNT publishing initiative, which was the Last Ronin, which is based on a story that its creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird originally had like cooked up back in the day, and then they finally put out over the course of 2021 and 2022. So it it's like, well, like before I get into talking about that, because well, whenever I talk about Ninja Turtles, I can't do it without talking about our other Ninja Turtles super fan here, and that's Myron. Hey, Myron, how you
Hey,
doing?
good. How you doing, Jason? John, thanks for having me on again.
Always a pleasure, man. Glad to have like someone who's got your depth and breadth of Ninja Turtles like knowledge to talk about here. And you really liked like the Last Ronin, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think after I read it and after we spoke about it, I think I kind of went in that Ninja Turtle fanboy kick where I bought a Last Ronin figure and started rewatching, the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie. I mean, that story did feel like a Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird storyline. Like it had that classic Ninja Turtle vibe to where, it felt like it almost felt like the darkness and despair of that first Turtles movie, where like, despite their efforts, like, you know, tragedy hits the family, and I was really surprised by it, and kind of wanted more, but didn't know what to expect from more. And of course, why we're here today is like we got a little bit of that more, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this part of the storyline.
Yeah, because like the Last Ronin was a huge success for both Ninja Turtles and IDW in general, to the point where it's kind of like for a series that was meant to like show like what is like the last Ninja Turtles story. Well, it's like something that was that successful. It's like you can't just like leave fallow. It's like, and here we are with just like talking about like what IDW has like brought up in its wake, and it's like, well, I know you really enjoyed it, Myron. It's like I was kind of like just a little bit like let down by it, in the sense that I went. It's like I like to think I can appreciate a good dark dark story where it just kind of shows you like what happens if everything that goes bad for everyone involved. But like the last run just kind of felt like like too dark for what I was expecting from like a final Ninja Turtle story. And it's like, and while I can appreciate the fact that hey, like that Michelangelo was like the last turtle left standing here, it's like I just kind of felt that it was all just like more concerned with just how bad, how awful can things get for him as he it's like as he's like the last turtle left standing, like left to carry out his father and his brothers like desires for what he believes are his father and his brothers' desires for vengeance against the Oroku, like the Oroku clan. And also it didn't help the fact that I think that the main villain for this arc, Oroku Hiroto, was really kind of personality free. Just that he's evil. It's like he's like the Shredder's grandson. Grrr. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like we needed someone who was just like had a bit more depth to him than what we got here. But I'm clearly in the minority here, and it's like, but and so like I know like, a lot of people really like this, and that's why we're not just getting the like this mini series that fleshes out what Michelangelo was up to, um like prior to the last Ronin, but also a proper Last Ronin to like miniseries like that's been solicited for February of 2024. That being said, we've got the Last Ronin, the Lost Years, from co-writers Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman. Eastman, everyone knows who he is. It's like I don't need to tell you like his significance to the franchise. Waltz is the guy who has been co-writing like Ninja Turtles comics all since like IDW got the license. So and he's been doing a lot of good work there. And so like so when like his involvement here is solid. But we've also got it's like let's see, we've like there are two main artists for this series. There's S.L. Gallant, who has done a lot of stuff with Larry Hama, while on GI Joe, like a real American hero, while IDW still had license to that. And then there's Ben Bishop, who also worked on the Last Ronin as well, drawing certain flashback sequences and like otherworldly sequences as well. But the whole point with the Lost Years, like the core miniseries, like in this hardcover collection, is to let us know just what happened to Michelangelo, like after, it's like between like between like the death of his family and when he finally showed up again at the start of the last Ronin. So, and it's like this miniseries certainly explains it, but my God, it was really goddamn depressing. It's like it's just I just kind of felt that it was like that Michelangelo just like kind of just has to like eat so much shit over the course of this miniseries to the point where it's like I was honestly just like more depressed than anything else. Just the fact that we kind of like it felt like while this miniseries is like does like respect the continuity established in the last Ronin, it also like all the stuff that he like has to like endure like between then and that miniseries is just kind of like really depressing more than anything else. That's how I felt, because we're told that after he escapes, after he leaves the refuge of the Hamato clan, he just like goes off to a to a mountain refuge in order to collect himself, and then just and then like some bad dudes come up and just like, hey, here's a mutant, let's go and beat him up. And then they try, they fail. Michelangelo just kicks their ass, and then when he goes to like find out who sent them to kill who's running this guy, they found out it's someone known as the Death Worm. So basically that kind of like shows you like the whole like thread for this for this miniseries. Like he's like Michelangelo has to get his groove back. He's got to like get back in fighting condition, not just to beat Oroku Hiroto for what he did to his family, but also to defeat the Death Worm, and just like like show that he's got what it takes, that he's not just running away from this latest assault against his personal self. So
yeah. So if I could interject and kind of talk a little bit about the Last Ronin, about what you said about the Last Ronin earlier, and upon and leading into the Lost Years here. The Last Ronin is very dark for Ninja Turtles storyline that we're accustomed to. Like back when Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman did their original Ninja Turtles run, it's a lot more darker than what we were accustomed to seeing on the cartoon version, which was more lighthearted and comedy. And when you really dive into the comic book side of things, I mean, they take a lot from Japanese like samurai and ninja type honor and codes. And so this whole beef between the clans of Hamato and Oroku, like it's all about honor, and it's all about revenge. And so Michelangelo being the lighthearted / youngest turtle that we know of the four, like reading the Lost Years, we can we dive more into like how he doesn't necessarily feel built for this. You know what I mean? Like, Raph is the bruiser, Donnie's the intelligent one, Leo's the leader, but Michelangelo always felt inefficient. Like, I can't live up to this. He felt like he couldn't live up to Master Splinter's expectations, even though that's what they were trained on, their whole lives. And when we see him, and when it's revealed to us in The Last Ronin that it's Michelangelo as the last surviving turtle, and we see a hardened ninja versus a pizza eating skateboarder dude, character, it is a shock and a twist. Like, of all turtles, why did he survive? And of course, like, throughout that book, we see him do things and live by codes and principles that we never really thought he could stick with. And The Lost Years, to me, really dives into why he became, like, how he became more hardened, why he is the way he is, and the mental state that led him to the final battle with Shredder's grandson in the Hiroto in the first book. So I found it interesting how, like, in the first book of Last Ronin, we knew he migrated to Hokkaido, kind of like to kind of wander and escape from everything. But then during that time, it's like, well, what did you do out there? And we see that in this book, and I kind of agree with you. Like, it is depressing for him, like, to see him go through all this. All his troubles start in Hokkaido, where you see these guys with tattoos, belonging to Deathworm's gang, start to harass him and try to kill him just because, he's a mutant. And during that time in Hokkaido, he was just trying to recenter himself, like meditate and just kind of, recollect on his thoughts on everything that has happened, what his next steps need to be. And of course, that violence is what kind of propelled him or drove him to, you need to continue this revenge or continue this journey to honor our family. Like, you chilling here in peace is not your destiny. Your destiny is to end this strife between our clans. And so this whole attack on him in Hokkaido sends him on this journey to where he swam to the mainland and found Master Yip, who is part of the Hamato clan, and he learned different techniques and different trainings. And upon his finalization of this training, he's like, before you go and handle your family's business, you need to honor this code in taking out Deathworm. And one thing that I loved about this book that I found most interesting is how his brothers were still with him through this whole journey. And if you didn't read The Last Ronin at first, you might read this and think like, oh, well, the spirit of his brothers are with him. And it's like, technically kind of, but I saw more of his psyche being shattered because he felt so much guilt about everyone in his family dying except him. So it was almost like he was going crazy, and his brothers were telling him how to do things. Like, hey, Mikey, like, you got to do this because you made an oath with Master Yip, or hey, Mikey, your training is wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're not doing this right. And I love throughout the whole book, like, his brothers were just following him, like, psychologically and driving him crazy. And you found him speaking to himself and, just kind of going nuts, like, shut up. Like, I need that quiet. And so I love the fact that, we see Mikey's journey from the incident in Hokkaido, leading him all the way to, where did they end? It was in Rome, all the way to Rome in the Colosseum, where he met up with Deathworm for that final confrontation. But every step of the way, he finds some type of friendship or family to bond with, and it's taken away from him, which adds to his, like, I guess I would say that added fuel to the fire for, the revenge he needed to take out on, Hiroto eventually. And so that's what I found interesting about this book is, like, started in Hokkaido, then he found those, then he went to somewhere.
Went to Korea, the Unified Korean Republic.
Yeah, he went to Korea and had his journey there, but then he found that camp somewhere in Mongolia where he befriended that girl Jarrell.
Well,
Jarrell.
yeah, it's like he went through China, which is like been like an irradiated wasteland because of a giant earthquake there, and then like he lost his sight, and then he was like captured by that Mongolian tribe, but then like he learned to like cope without his sight.
Exactly. So it's like he met that tribe, and he was blind then, but he learned different techniques, which made him better and stronger. Using his other senses, he made new friendships, which were eventually taken away from him. And then he gets taken by this.
He was forced to fight in the Thunderdome.
Yeah, basically, like he was taken by this group where he became, in Thunderdome, and he met a friend there that eventually, was taken away from him. And so, like everybody he loved in his life has been taken away from him, which has just made him more of a battle-hardened turtle that we see in the Last Ronin.
Yeah, on one hand, it's like I see what you're saying about his about the idea that his brothers are saying like that they're appearing in his mind, and it's like his kind of like maybe like his personal like recrimination about that. Like they're not just like, it's not just like his brothers speaking him as themselves. It's basically like they're basically like giving voice to his own guilt. But I guess what my issue with this is that I don't think the series quite like gets that point across. I get the feeling that they're still kind of, I don't think that Waltz and Eastman really kind of like sell this idea. It's like I think they kind of also want to like sell the idea that it's that his brothers are still with him and they're still kind of urging him on, and like, but it still kind of feels just like, and if that's the case, this still feels really kind of depressing in the sense that like they're just kind of like negging him at every single opportunity over the course of the series. And on one hand, it's like I mean, like I reread The Last Ronin, and I know there's a point like towards the end where like Michelangelo just says like, just leave me alone, and like that's the last time we hear from them. But at the same time, though, seeing them play such a prominent role like in this miniseries, it honestly kind of feels like they're trying to like have things both ways, like just both like have Raphael, Donatello, and Leonardo like be characters in this story, but also just be voices of his guilt as well. And at the same time, though, like they're just like being overwhelmingly negative, like about like everything he does over the course of the series, and it's just, for me, it just kind of felt just really depressing, like to see that, as is the case, where it's kind of like wherever Michelangelo goes, it's like just tragedy is like not far behind in every single instance. It's just kind of like, wouldn't it just be fine if just he just like went to some place and people didn't die because of his involvement, So that's kind of what got me about this. It's like about this follow up. Just the fact that wherever he went, it was just like like his brothers were negging him on, and bad things were happening. Like even as he like got his old skills back, it's like, and it just like just like I say, it was just like just depressing to read for a good portion of this of this miniseries, really.
Yeah, and I can see that too, and I see that point of view as well. But I feel like even with that negging and that criticisms that his brothers gave him, along the way, like eventually that kind of stepped up his game, and I feel like he overcame like what needed to be done. Even though like with the Thunderdome storyline, it's like he rose to the top. Fighting all the mutants until his last showdown was with his friend Shaka, and Shaka saw the intent and honor and what he was trying to do, to where he was willing to sacrifice himself in order for Michelangelo to complete his mission. And that was tragic in the sense of like like having another friend die, but then in that situation, that was like a kill or be killed situation where if Shaka didn't do what he did, then, Michelangelo would have had to kill him with his bare hands, which, could have like damaged him even more. But at the same time, like, I feel like every step of the way, as his brothers were nagging him, he was getting closer and closer to completing his honor obligation until like he eventually did. And so like once he overcame that, at least for me as the reader, I felt like, all right, my son, you're ready. Like Michelangelo, you're ready. Like you did all this and you had to go through this tragedy, and now you're ready to take on Hiroto, which is your family's mission. And so I feel like with our turtles, the turtles we grew up with, like yeah, their end is supposed to be the tragedy and not so happy and depressing storyline. But with the new turtles that we are introduced into this storyline, with Odin
Oh,
and
we're getting ahead of ourselves, though.
okay, getting ahead of ourselves. But with the new generation, that's where I feel like okay, now there's hope to continue on, not with the initial mission, which is vengeance against the Oroku clan. Now the mission is to protect the city, protect the people. And so yeah, I feel like at some point when you're telling a story about like the turtles we grew up with, like you have to come up with some end for them, whether it's like a little bit more happy to where like yeah, maybe they all died of old age and only one survives, to teach the new generation, or it's that battle hardened ninja code where it's like yeah, our clans have been fighting for hundreds of years and we've had tragic losses from both sides, yet in the end it's going to come down on one versus one, whose 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 philosophy and whose truth is going to overcome this war. And I feel like the culmination of what happened in the Last Ronin and all the background we got in the Lost Years, like the Hamato clan's truth, eventually came out on top.
I get what you're saying. For me, though, it's like, yeah, it's like it still felt really depressing. The way they portrayed things here, just like that Mikey had just like constantly like endure suffering
Oh
over the
yeah.
course over the course of like this miniseries, and it's like it's like I like I said, I was just hoping for more, like for more than that, just like more than just like oh, Mikey had to suffer like for all these like for a solid decade before he came back to take on Hiroto and the rest of the like Oroku clan. But
Mhm.
also I want to bring up like as far as like this whole death worm subplot is like I mean I can kind of see what it's like what Wallace and Eastman were going for with here. It's like in that like that Deathworm was just a guy who
Yeah.
was like good at stuff, but I guess like it kind of left me wondering like what if like he had just been like one of the other like members of the Turtles Rogues Gallery, you know like what if he had been like what if he'd been like Bebop or Rocksteady, it's like what if he'd been like the Rat King or something like that, just I guess like he's I, I was honestly kind of expecting him to just be like them like Mikey to get to like the like get to the death worm, that then be told like, oh no, there was no death worm at all. He was just just some sort of like illusion. He was just like like an idea more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that could have been way more interesting because, like, let's face it, I will admit, like, by the time he got to Deathworm, it was kind of like an underwhelming reveal. Because, like, even Mikey himself, like, when he fought the big dude, he's like, "Oh yeah, this is the guy," and then like he beat him easily. Like, "Oh wait, that was way too easy." And then when you see the actual Deathworm, it's like, "Yeah, who's this guy?" And
Yeah,
it is what it is. But yeah, I agree with you. Like it would have been far more compelling if the Deathworm character was either, a villain that we know well from the Turtles Rogue Gallery or an idea. Like, Deathworm isn't a person; it's a collective that was established by, I don't know, Baxter Stockman or who was still alive at this point. Prior to Last Ronin, something like that.
Yeah, it's like I think we're just like we're not saying that he had to be, like someone from like the Turtles Rogues Gallery. It's just that the way he's like presented in like this miniseries just kind of felt like he's just like really underwhelming for what he was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I guess we're talking about like the art for this series because it's basically handled by two main artists, S.L. Gallant for the for the flashback sequences like involving Michelangelo's quest, and Ben Bishop for the present day stuff involving the April, Casey, her daughter Casey, and the new generation of turtles as well. Because I was like I generally liked it. S.L. Gallant does solid work, even though I don't think he's quite on the level of Isao and Isaac Escorza, who did the majority of the art for the Last Ronin. Ben Bishop did do like some of the art for the Last Ronin, and he provides the present day sequences for the for this present generation of turtles. And I like that a lot more because he's got like a nice level of detail and texture to his work. It's just something that just feels like a lot more like invested in like the level of detail he's offering.
I can agree with that too, because like when going through the book, like I did like the artwork overall, but I did find myself like being more intrigued with the artwork of the present day versus the then time. A lot more detail and coloring, and just kind of like I don't know how to explain it. Like there was like a little bit more edge to it, where like, yeah, the artwork in the past, like Mikey's storyline, like, yeah, there was a lot more like softer lines to me, and as far as like the other characters aside from Michelangelo himself, just the other human characters and everything, and like it kind of reminded me more of like, I guess, like a late 80s early 90s style comic book. But I did like the artwork overall, don't get me wrong. And of course, like, you can't mistake Eastman's artwork when he did like the Splinter Journal,
Yes.
Splinter Journals, and of course like that Lost Day, the artwork in the Lost Day storyline that you were telling me about. Like, I mean, that's unmistakable. But I have to say, like, the artwork in the Last Ronin itself was like way more grittier and edgier that I like, compared to this one.
Yeah, I guess it bears talking about the it's like the Lost Day special because in the because in the collection that we've got like IDW like decided to reprint this really weirdly because while the Lost Years was a 5-issue miniseries, the Lost Day was a one shot, and well they apparently for reasons that are unknown to me in the collection, IDW decided to put the Lost Day one shot in between issues 4 and 5 of like the Lost Years, which okay, I mean I can understand. On one hand, I can understand like them trying to like maybe it's like like save like the dramatic like finish of the Lost Years, for its like for like your last experience like going out of this book. But for me though, that didn't work because I think that the Lost Day is like easily the best thing I've read from this whole Last Ronin continuity of the Turtles.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's not. It doesn't have like like a complex plot to it. Basically, it's all about April getting the this new generation of turtles, Odin, Yi, Moja, and Uno, like together with her as she goes out on an unspecified mission of trade between various factions in the city. Because while Casey is getting ready for a date between her and like some guy from the police force in the city, well, April and the turtles are doing their own thing right here. Now, while it seems very much like this is like setting up, like stuff to be explored for future stories in this continuity. I honestly think it does it like pretty well, because it basically just shows you like April just like going around to like various people, like the let's let's see, like
Tinker
Tinker
too.
2, yeah, Jigsaw, and those corrupt cops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, and just showing you just like, hey, hey, we're not just like telling you like a big epic story here. We're just like, just hey, like some person's got stuff. We got to go to them and get other stuff and get more stuff as well. And I think that they tell it's just fun just seeing them like go through and just like work together. It's like in order to get it's like in order to get things from point A to point A to point B. It's like, and I think like the back they do a good job of like world building in terms of like setting up the various power factions for this for this current era. I can't say it necessarily makes me eager to read future stories here, but it does like strike me as it's a fun day in the life story for these characters, and something, and it's not relentlessly grim like everything else has been in this continuity, and that definitely counted for a lot in my opinion.
Yeah, and until you brought it up to me, I didn't realize like that particular chapter in this trade, this hardcover book was not part of the original like issue lineup, and it did kind of break up the story, and I did find it weird. Like, okay, like yeah, this whole chapter just focuses on the now time frame in the present, and I guess it kind of helped break it up a bit, because as you read through this book, like yeah, it jumps from then to now, and from past to present day,
Yeah.
and so like when we get to that chapter, it is a little bit more lighthearted, because I loved going through this book and kind of seeing like getting acquainted with the different personalities of like the new generation of turtles, because it's like I see a little bit of Donatello in Moja, like even though he's more of an asshole, I do see like a little bit of Leonardo and Raphael in Uno.
Yeah, Uno's a giant dick, really.
Yeah, it's like, and of course, like Odin is like the kind of meek, chubby one, and I see a little bit of more Michelangelo in him, and so it's like I see like the personalities. We get to know the personalities of these new turtles, and it's cute that they refer to April as Grammy April, and they reflect on Casey Jones being grandpa and things like that. But to your point, when we see them go to the surface for Black Market Day, I feel like they're setting up characters in the storyline that we're going to become accustomed to as they continue on, especially like Tinker 2 and Jigsaw and the two cops. Because let's face it, like these four turtles are going to be like our four new heroes that are going to protect New York City. And I found it interesting how April kind of explained how the new way of the world works, like how Hiroto set up the credit, like he set up a credit system that akin to me from Black Mirror, like the social credits, where like yeah, you have to be a certain social status in order to like buy and trade. But for those who live in the underground, they trade through stuff, through items. And it was cool that their first stop was going to Tinker 2 and trading Tommy Boy for crap. What was it? It was something that it was
it was the needle. It was like the record needle.
Yeah, it was the record needle that Jigsaw needed for his record player. And then they got donuts from Jigsaw that the cops wanted so that they can get fireworks in order to celebrate the commander's retirement from the what was it,
Like,
the flight,
it was like police force, right, or something like that.
He wasn't the police force. He was part of that. He was part of the underground. He was a commander from the underground that worked with April.
Yeah, Commander Avalon, like a
Thank
former
you, yeah.
Marine and New York City cop.
Correct. Yeah. So he was like a former Marine, and he was part of the underground where like, yeah, they're the ones that work together to take down Baxter Stockman's stronghold in Last Ronin. So it was kind of cool, like to not only see like how like commerce works for people who aren't part of like the main society. But then we see the turtles like I call them teenage, like pre-teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Mm,
because they're really they're I guess they just turned 13 or
yeah,
12 or they're about 12 at this point. But no, okay. They're teenagers because they're 13. Because I remember Odin was drinking the adult punch, and one of the soldiers was like, "You shouldn't be drinking that. That's not for kids." And he's like, "I just turned 13." So yeah,
yeah.
they're teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now at this point. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of see how these turtles are becoming acclimated and learning of the surface world and interacting with human beings, and like the humans are acceptant of them from the get-go, whereas the turtles we grew up with had to struggle with acceptance. So mutancy is like normal at this point. So I thought it was cool kind of like setting that up to what we can expect of a Last Ronin continuation from these turtles.
Okay. So, and also one thing I want to point out though is that the corrupt cops, Richard Miller and Frank Corbin, well, they're thinly veiled versions of Frank Miller and Richard Corbin. It's like basically like who Frank Miller is, obviously. But
Obviously.
Richard Corbin is like legendary like horror artist. Like we did a lot of like classic horror stuff with creepy. Also worked with did a lot of stuff with like Marvel and DC. It's like and also with Mike Mignola in more recent years.
Okay.
But yeah, but it's fun. It was a fun like little visual nod to see them like cast these creators as characters in the it's like in this one shot as well. And yeah, it's like I said, I like this one shot. And on one hand, it does make me like, kind of curious to see like where they're going to go with these with these characters from here on out. But but the thing is like I worry that like this lost day is kind of like the exception, like rather than the rule of what's going to go from here because like a lot, like I said, my issue with a lot of this Last Ronin stuff is it's just been really depressing, like more than anything else. And while I think that like hey, seeing this next generation of turtles protect the city, okay, well maybe you've got like a framework for like a more like uplifting, like less grim like series of stories than what we've got so far. I don't know. It's like I just don't know if that's what we can expect from here because overall it's like I can't say that like I've really like enjoyed a lot of the stuff they've done here. To be honest, it just feels like it's just too dark, too grim, not fun, like compared to like what I want to see from like an initial story. To be honest,
Okay.
but you're on board with this, Myron, right?
I'm on board with this. Like depending on the story and what's what the outcome is supposed to be, like I can love it or hate it, depending on what the goal is here. And it's like, just a sidebar, not spoil anything. If you look at Attack on Titan, and we had that conversation, the past couple of weeks. I mean, you can talk to a lot of fans that say they hate the ending because maybe that's not what they expected, but I thought it was powerful. And the same thing with this storyline where like, yeah, it is a very darker and depressing book if you take away the one shot. But to me, I found it intriguing because it gave me a background on why Michelangelo is the way he is in The Last Ronin. Like it's kind of difficult, like I mean, I felt The Last Ronin did a good job kind of like giving us like the setup of his mission and why he's so battle hardened, because obviously he lost all his family members. Like, why wouldn't you want to get revenge? But then at the same time, like there has to be a little bit more meaning to that, and or there's got to be some type of motivation behind all that we didn't get that explanation to in the first book. And I feel like this book kind of covered it to where like, oh damn, like no wonder he has, you know, the skill sets that he has. No wonder he keeps seeing like, you know, his brothers, like it's not his brother's spirits, it's his, you know, his psyche. Like he spent his whole life with his brothers and knows them so well to where like he knows what they're going to say. Like it almost feels like the his brothers are there as spirits because they 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 discuss and talk to him as if they were there, but he knows them so well to where like, oh, I know what Raph is about to say. Oh, Mikey, you suck. Or like, I know what Leo's about to say. Yeah, you didn't do that too well. Or like, I know what Donnie's about to say. Like, yeah, Mike, if you plug this into here, you'll get a better result. Like he knows them so well to where like it almost feels like they're alive in his mind. And so like that's the vibe I got, you know, from the background of this, like the background of his story and from this book, is that they were still with him, kind of like still kind of guiding him and trading him in a more I guess harsher way. Because like, why didn't Splinter come out and give him more words of wisdom? Like the wisdom he got from Splinter was from his journal, but he spent most of his life and most of his time with his brothers to where like they were still bickering with each other, like they were on the field, you know, the whole time. And so like I did find this book a little bit more interesting despite it being a lot darker and a little bit more depressing, because to me it just gave me a little bit more of a character development on this new Michelangelo that I'm not accustomed to seeing.
That's fair. And only thing I'll point out though is that, you know, like Attack on Titan, you know, was pretty grim, you know, from the jump. And I think that, you know, that kind of helps contribute to like any kind of storytelling it tells in terms of like, you know, things are going to get darker. Well, yeah, that's kind of like how Attack on Titan rolls.
And it is. It's like it was grim from the jump, but then like when you think about the prototype, when you think about the prototypical hero, you always feel like, oh, by the end of the series, you know, they're gonna come out on top and everything is happy. And like you kind of think that with the Turtles too, especially like with the vibe we've been kind of brainwashed on with them, you know, throughout our entire life. Like, you know, yeah, they're gonna go through hard times, but at the end of the series, they're gonna eat pizza and have fun and cowabunga all the way through the sewers on their fucking cheapskates. But this one, yeah, like this storyline, like yeah, there's no pizza parties at the end.
Yeah, but I guess it would kind of boils down to, for like in terms of like enjoyment of like the lost years though, is that, you know, it's like I hate to say it's like as simplistic as this, but basically if you were on board with what was done in the Last Ronin, then yeah, it's like this is gonna be like more of the same for you. It's like, and you're probably gonna like dig that. But
Agreed.
if you're like me and you kind of thought that, yeah, that was kind of like too grim for what you wanted for a turtle story, then yeah, it's like you're not gonna like this as much. It's like, and I gotta admit, it's like even though like they've already announced that there's a Last Ronin 2 miniseries in the offings, like as of like, you know, starting in February of next year. I'm not sure if you'll see it covered here. It's like, unless there is like real demand, like from the audience, or, you know, like if you want to do it, Myron, then, you know, hit me up. Or, you know, if John, like if you're on board, if you want to like, you know, dive into this as well, let me know too.
Sure. I can't claim to be at the level you guys are with this, but yeah, I'm always open to giving my opinion. So that's cool.
Yeah, I would definitely check it out, because at least for me, like the Last Ronin, like I bought the individual issues for, because like, you know, I consider myself like an old school like comic book collector, where like I just love buying the issues like monthly when they came out. But you know, as I've gotten older, like, you know, finances and responsibility, you know, like Uncle Ben always told me, yeah, I couldn't keep up with all that stuff anymore. So being able to buy like trade paperbacks or complete like hardcovers does make it a little bit easier to kind of ingest the entire story. So like when you told me about this, like, yeah, you know, I pre-ordered it the day of its release, and you know, came out and I ingested it in like 2 days. And so it does make it a little bit easier to kind of like keep up with the story. So when they do come out with the next Last Ronin, and once it comes out on trade paperback or hardcover, yeah, I'd definitely pick it up and give it a shot. Because I mean, at least for me, like, I mean, I love the characters that I grew up with. My Autobots, my Turtles, my Spider-Mans, and all that stuff. And we grew up with them in a particular view, in a particular way that we perceive them. But if they give me like a different type of view or a different type of storyline that I'm not accustomed to or never seen them in that way, like, yeah, I'm willing to give it a shot just to see how interesting they can mix it up. Like, I don't really need to see like, the Turtles win all the time or Optimus Prime win all the time. And one thing that for me as a Spider-Man fan, like one thing that I always grew up loving about Spider-Man versus like over like someone like Superman, for instance, like Spider-Man has this power and ability that he could be a complete asshole with, but he does what's right, for the people and the people he loves over his own ambitions and necessities. Like he carries his cross to do what's right for others. And that's and sometimes that leads to tragedy, and sometimes that leads to backfires. Like every now and then he'll have his happy ending, but at least it backfires sometimes. And that's what I saw in this book as well. Like Michelangelo could have easily like kicked it in Hokkaido and like chilled in peace, but because of the family beef with the Oroku clan, and his brother's not giving him peace, he had to carry his cross too to finish the mission. And I think that's what I found most compelling, as depressing as it was, or depressing as it could be. Like, it gave me another perspective of a character that I grew up for the past 30 years having a particular vision of. And I'm looking at my turtles in my cabinet kitchens right now. I got my Michelangelo on his cheapskate. Like, he was the party dude. But this is a type of Michelangelo that I never saw before. Because even when the Last Ronin came out and we had that discussion and everyone's like, who's the survivor? I'm like, it's got to be Raphael, just because like just the way he's approaching battle, that's his battle style.
He's so bitter and angry that he has to be the last one standing.
Exactly. It's like the whole time, like the whole time in the Last Ronin, like the first issue, like, he gives hints of each turtle to where like, oh, it's got to be Leonardo. Like, nah, like he demonstrates some Raphael vibes to me here, to where I think it's Raph. Like, no, I think it's Donatello because he intelligently did this, and it ended up being Michelangelo. This book kind of gives us that reason why, as a viewer, we kind of started seeing that or questioning that ourselves, because yeah, his brothers are with him in his head. So it's like, it threw us off like, oh yeah, like it couldn't be Michelangelo because we know he's a goofball. It's got to be one of the other three. And the experiences that he went through in this book, like, kind of explains a lot.
All right. Well, hey, I'm glad it worked for you, Myron. It's like,
Thank you.
It didn't really work for me, but it's like, I was like, I can't say this was like, this was terrible. I mean, misguided in my opinion, yeah, but definitely not terrible. Like, I think it was like, it still had, I like Eastman, Waltz, Bishop, and Gallant. I clearly believed in the story they were telling here, and more power to them. But for me, it just didn't work really.
All righty then. Hey, you know what you're going to be talking about next time?
Well, it's like, it's either going to be following up on something I talked about with Christine last year, and that'll be like, I'll bring this up with her and then when I talk to her next time, or like I may just have to do a proper Buried Treasures of Manga by podcast this year, because like I ducked out on like when I usually do it for this year as well. So it'll be a surprise for everyone involved.
Surprise. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. And
yeah, thanks for joining us, Myron. Always a pleasure to have you.
Definitely. I appreciate you guys bringing me on. This was a good discussion.
All right. Catch you next time on Comic Picks by the Glick.
All right. Later, everyone.
Later.